Greetings, everyone. My name is Eric Stewart from Fishing Fanatics, and I'm super excited today with the guest we have on the podcast, Whit Edmonds. He's been doing some collegiate fishing in his past at Lander University, and he traveled around the country doing these different tournaments for MLF, Bassmasters, and ACA. Now he currently works at Z-Man Fishing. So, Whit, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Excited for the weekend. How about you?
Dude, me too. I'm ready to party a little bit.
There you go.
Yeah, man. So real quick off the bat, college fishing, it's one of those things that, I'm not too familiar with growing up in the PA area. It's always when I was growing up, it's always, you do baseball or you go into this like I played college baseball and I grew up that way and I got people kind of going like that. But I just have to ask you, is it kind of similar with fishing? Do people like find you when you're fishing these tournaments? And did your high school team have like a fishing team or how did that kind of work?
Yeah, so college fishing's kind of its own animal because it really wasn't, it really hadn't been around for but just a few years before I started college. And I feel like my time in college, the atmosphere of it changed every year, and it always changes for the better. I mean, you get better anglers. The organizations find better ways to run it, and it's getting better every year. But it is changing. One of the interesting things about me is I actually didn't fish high school. I didn't have the opportunity, and high school fishing is a great thing, and I would have loved to do it. My school simply didn't have a team, so I fished. Pretty much all my tournaments were on Lake Murray, South Carolina. Just a lot of little pickup tournaments. Occasionally, I'd hop in something affiliated with TBF or that sort of thing. But I actually was found through social media. So that's how I kind of got on board, and I started talking to the at the time the president of the team, and he got me up there to tour the school and talk to him about the team. And I really liked Lander University, and I liked all the people on the team that I met, and kind of was kind of set on going there and fishing in college after that. But there's so many ways you get recruited. I actually at one point I had another school try and give me a scholarship to leave Lander, but we've recruited most of our people from the high school series. You'll see a lot of college coaches at high school weigh-ins, but we've recruited people that we've found through all sorts of tournament trails as well. We've got one guy, or well, I say we've got, but I've graduated now. But there's one guy at Lander who's just qualified for the MLF invitationals, and he was found more so through tournaments, I believe. So you don't have to be a high school fisherman to start on college, and it's still one of those things you can be a walk on as well. You don't have to get found by a college either, but there really are so many ways to get involved.
So, how many guys do you guys carry on those teams? Like, what's like a normal team look like?
Um, you'll see it all over the place. Some of the schools you hear about a lot, like Bethel and Adrian and Carson Newman, have a ton of guys, but there's some teams that don't have but two people, just one boat. A lot of teams have a lot of teams have maybe 20 guys or so. I want to say when I left Lander, we when I started at Lander, we probably had somewhere in the 10 to 15 person range. When I left, we probably had, I think, upwards of 30. And I believe I've heard they've gotten a lot more now. They've gotten it to be a pretty good and big program. But yeah, it only takes one guy to make a team. You're supposed to fish as pairs, but you don't necessarily have to. So it really you can have a college fishing team with one guy essentially.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty funny to think. Like, I'm just out there fishing. I'm one guy, but I fish for one of these big time schools. It's pretty cool.
Oh
Is it
yeah.
like a varsity? Is it like a varsity makeup and JV makeup, or is like two people make the varsity team and fish, or do you guys like have multiple boats in certain tournaments?
Yeah, so that's one of the things where college fishing becomes a lot more interesting how other sports are set up, because it's um, because there's so many ways that it is done. So normally lander, we'd have multiple boats at any tournament we went to. I think I only ever fished one tournament. It was on Pickwick, and we were the only lander boat there. And the only reason is because we didn't fish a ton of the ACA, but we wanted to get that national championship spot on Lake Murray. So we hopped in that. But a lot of schools will send all of their boats. A lot of schools will only send a percentage, depending how big it is. Some schools will start a program where certain teams can get funded to go, but anybody can pay their own way to go. So that's how Landers started doing it, I believe. And there's always, most every team will find a fair way to do it. There's a lot of in-state tournaments that happen in the fall, and that's often how that's decided. So you'll kind of, whoever's leading in points in those will kind of um, this be the essentially the travel team that gets funded. But a lot of schools, even if you don't make that, you can still fund your way. Um, and when I was at Lander, we pretty much anyone that wanted to go could go and get at least their housing funded, and as much as we could with afford with the budget. But that's one of those things that changes every year. Um, and that's kind of the setup most of the bigger programs do, is they fund as many people as they can, but once you get to a certain size, programs tend to go to a more of a travel team, and then the other people can pay their way.
That makes sense. And it's so is it a lot of fundraising or is a lot of it like sponsorships from like big brands?
Um, it kind of depends. Lander, Lander, we did a lot of sponsorships, and the school would help us some. Some teams, the schools don't help them at all, and it's all fundraising. And you may see them do a fundraiser tournament, or maybe they go out and everyone on the team has to get one sponsor in order to have funding for that sort of thing. Um, there's other teams whose schools help them a ton. It depends on the school, but yeah, it's the biggest part you usually see if a school has funding is going to be kind of a mix of everything, particularly sponsorships and school funding. And it also has a little bit to depend on whether it's a club or a team, because to fish these college tournaments, you don't have to be in under your athletic program. You can form a fishing club at your school, and you can still be competitive.
Gotcha. That totally all makes sense. And then so you're out there fishing tournaments and everything, right? I'm sure you're friends with everyone on the team. You guys are just having a good time. Is there any story that like pops out to you of like maybe one guy on the team that got a little carried away, maybe fell off the boat? Anything like that like pops out to you of your whole college experience fishing?
I mean, there's a million stories. I mean, from just being stranded on the Great Lakes to changing brakes on the side of the interstate to, I mean, you name it, we've done it. When you're traveling like that, anything can happen. I think one of the funniest things, just because you mentioned someone falling off the boat, we were one time we took me and some friends took two boats down to Lake Lanier, and um, and one of the guys wanted to hop on the other guy's boat to fish for a little bit. So he had borrowed my fishing partner's life jacket. Little known to me, it was an inflatable life jacket that didn't work. And he hopped off the boat, and he fell right in the water between the boats, and he was holding the life jacket. And all of a sudden, I heard my partner start screaming, "Don't let the life jacket sink." But
Oh,
uh, there's all
those life
kind of
jackets are
crazy.
expensive too, dude.
Yeah.
Those things are expensive. You don't want to lose one of them.
Oh yeah. But yeah, there's all kind of crazy things. A lot of my favorite stories are more about during tournaments, just trying to kind of keep your fish a little bit of a secret during pre-fishing, especially on Tennessee River. There was one time I got kind of I fished Pickwick more than any of the other lakes in the college series. I got to know it pretty well, and I got to where I do this thing to kind of hide my fish from people because I quickly realized that if you put your trolling motor down out on a ledge out there, people watch you and they watch you hard. So there was one time I was graphing and graphing and graphing just like everybody does. And I was so far away from the ledge, and it was so obvious I was not on a ledge anymore. I was just out in like 15 foot of water in no man's land. And I found a whole bunch of timber. And so I stopped my boat without thinking about it. I wanted to pan optics around kind of and drag a football jig through it and just kind of see what it was about. And I cast my football jig out there. And as soon as I cast it, I looked around. I realized there were two other boats about 100 yards from me, and they had both stopped. And one of the guys, you could tell he had slammed it in reverse, and it was so obvious I was being watched. And about as soon as I realized that, I felt a big old thump on my rod. So what I did was I trolling motored perfectly. So right on the edge of the boat where the passenger seat was just blocking about 6 inches of that little edge of the boat from those other two boats. So I pointed my rod straight at the fish. I started reeling like I was just cranking it back, just started looking around like nothing was going on. And I just, as slyly as I could, boat just drug it right over the edge, and all in one motion, drug it over the edge where they couldn't see it, strapped my rod down, pulled the trolling motor up, started driving off. And as I was driving off, my partner Bobby unhooked the fish and tossed him in the water.
Let's go, little grab and go. Little
Yeah.
grab and go. That's
And I
great.
don't think they ever knew.
Yeah, because the only way you find that spot, right? You're just out there searching for it. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's all it is. There's nothing on the map at all. It's just is one of those things you're graphing for 3 days of pre-fishing, and eventually you run out of obvious stuff, and you you start to, I mean, a lot of times when we're out there that long, we just start thinking, and while we're thinking we kind of drive off into wherever, and sometimes we happen to find something while we're thinking about what to do next, and that was one of those times.
Yep, absolutely. And that kind of brings me to my next question, and it's one of these things that I've been thinking about purchasing, and that's a live scope. So, what are your thoughts on live scopes? You like them? You don't like them? Kind of.
You know,
What are you thinking?
it's everyone calls it a game changer, and it is. It makes the world of the difference. One thing you have to remember though is you're not going to hook you're not going to get any more bites just because you have live scope. It's still fishing. You still have to find a way to get those fish to bite. But what it does come in handy with is just breaking apart down a lake really fast. And it makes it so much easier to find brush. You don't have to fish as long. Like for cane pile fishing, which we do a lot in South Carolina, you don't have to sit there and cast at every cane pile to see if you can call them out. You know on your first cast if they're in there because you can see them poke their heads out. But that doesn't mean you're going to catch it anymore. I mean, if you throw a top water over that cane pile with live scope or without live scope, it's doing the same thing as long as it goes over the cane pile.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
I think
You're
that's
either
where a
right
lot
though or
of
not.
people, but I think that's what a lot of people don't think about is it's still fishing. Like when I first got it, I thought that I was going to instantly be making my money back, but tournament finish wise, I don't think it really changed that much for me. I think more or less it just saved me some time and energy during pre-fishing, if anything. It just helped me figure out those fish's position a lot quicker.
I like it. That's great insight there because kind of that's what I thought. Live scope. Oh, I'll catch more fish. There you go. Lock it in. But no, that totally makes sense. It's like they still gotta bite. They still gotta be hungry, right?
Yeah.
So
Now, is it worth the money? I mean, if you're a serious fisherman and you can afford it, it's absolutely worth the money. I mean, it's amazing technology, and it's going to help you a lot, and you're going to have a lot of fun with it. But you do have to remember that it is still, no matter how many graphs you get, it's still just you with a rod in your hand and a bait on the other end.
Yep. Ain't that the truth? But so how about what's your go to lure? You had to pick one lure throw for the rest of your life. What are
You
you
know,
grabbing?
it kind of depends. Being from Lake Murray, I've a huge on fishing top waters and working flukes super fast across the top of the water and small swim baits like Seville's. But when I started fishing college and going around the country, I had to kind of learn you can't do that everywhere you go. It's a very selective thing. So I've always been a pretty big finesse fisherman, and if I had to choose one bait, I'd probably choose a Ned rig with a Z-Man TRD and a Z-Man finesse shrooms. That's something, whether I'm down in Florida fishing um, edges of grass lines or up on the Great Lakes catching big smallmouth off rock piles, and everywhere in between, I feel like I can catch a fish on a Ned rig.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you guys some credit because I got buddies that fish them in creeks and I fish them in lakes and they just catch fish. That net
Oh
rig you
yeah.
guys produced at Z Man, dynamite.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's so great because it's a Las Tech too, so it's you don't have to do anything to make it stand up. If it's sitting on the bottom and you let it sit there, it's going to slowly stand up, and it gives it the that same profile that a crawfish that's trying to be defensive would give off, trying to stand up and look. And I mean, it's just such a natural profile, and it's such an easy little meal for all kinds of fish.
Yeah, anything can bite it. So that kind of brings me into my next point. I know I mentioned at the beginning you work at Z Man Fishing, and just doing some research, I saw you on their TikTok page.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
give me a little bit of what you do there and kind of what your day to day looks like.
Yeah, so it's kind of all over the place. I was hired on to run their customer service, so that's my main priority is making sure we have the fastest response time as we can get, and keeping our all of our customer service inquiries handled, and making those customers as happy as I can possibly make them, and finding ways to improve our business based off of customer suggestions as well, because we love our customers' feedback. Um, but since working there, I've definitely taken on some new responsibilities. I get to help out in a lot of departments. One of the things is TikTok. I kind of manage the TikTok. Most of the videos on there, ones that I do, we try and do about two of them a week, and also kind of help out with some engagement on some other social media platforms. And right now, I'm planogramming and setting up um, our product line that we're bringing to one of our distributor shows coming up. But I do a lot of stuff. Usually, I start out on a day, I go through our web orders, try and fix any of the problems that we had the night before with customers' orders. Then I go through customer service emails and return all their phone calls, release anything on credit hold. And then after that, I may help out with some tasks that the sales team assigns to me, such as planning for those shows. And a lot of the shows I get to go to and help out as well. Then I may make a TikTok, or occasionally we'll go do a photo shoot. And it's kind of nice because being with my position and where I'm, and as early as I am in my career, Z-Man really allows me to get experience in so many of those fields, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a great work environment.
It's the biggest thing, man. And same thing to hear. It's like, it's so much fun to jump around and learn different things. Like you could just jump around, go TikTok, help out the sales team, and I'm sure you're doing a bunch of other stuff. I gotta ask, the I got a lot of buddies who are looking for careers in the fishing industry, and they're just trying to figure it out, trying to work for a company like Z-Man Fishing. How did you get the job at Z-Man
Yeah.
Fishing?
Um, so yeah, that's the biggest thing. I know when I was in college, I was seeing all of my friends get all these jobs at different companies. Particularly around here, we have pure fishing and rather outdoors, and lots of my friends that were getting jobs there. So I was in that same boat not long ago, trying to figure out how they got on. Me personally, I actually found it on LinkedIn, and it wasn't necessarily even a job posting I found. It was actually a personal post by um, the guy who's now my boss. And he was just asking if there's anybody who's knowledgeable about fishing that would be interested in working their customer service. So I shot connected with him and shot him a message and ended up with the job. And that's one of those things my business professors in college preached to me so hard, was how important LinkedIn it was. And as a college kid, I more or less just wanted to promote my fishing. I wasn't, LinkedIn was kind of boring to me, but um, it's such a, now that I'm in the industry, it's such a fun app because you can, for one thing, you can find jobs like just the same way I did, but you can also meet people um, all over the industry, just like I connected with you on LinkedIn. And it really is a great tool. And not just that, but everyone you meet when you're in college, and anyone you meet that's on the college fishing tour, or even just your friends that are interested in fishing, maintaining those connections is so important, because I never realized just how many people I knew from fishing that were also going to end up in the industry, and are now meaningful connections I have with other businesses as well. So the biggest thing is just connecting and keeping up with everyone that you meet.
Yep, and put yourself out there, right? Don't be afraid to bother someone. People like hearing out from young people that are interested in the fishing community. So it's funny, your story and my story are kind of like the same exact way. How I got, working at Bad Rhino. I reached out to the owner and we had an interview and I got the job. That's funny.
Yep.
It's funny, man. So I know you mentioned about the different expos you guys got coming up, and you got any coming up like soon that you can like share with us, so I can share with the listeners?
Yeah, the soonest public events we'll be at is going to be the Classic, where we're at every year, and we should be at the Red Crest event for MLF this year as well. So those will both be in March, I believe, and we'll have our team out there. We'll have a whole lot of products at our booth to show people, and we'll be happy to talk to anybody and answer any questions they could possibly have about Z-Man or fishing.
Nice. And Whit, one last question here. Where can people order some Z-Man baits like that Ned rig that we talked about?
Yeah, yeah, there's a ton of places you can get it. Most of your big sporting goods stores now have it, like Bass Pro, Cabela's, Tackle Warehouse, Discount Tackle, or all have a great selection of our baits. And anytime you can't find a bait from one of your tackle, local or online tackle dealers, we also open up our website just in case there's something you can't find. You can order it directly from us.
Awesome, Whit. And gotta say, man, I appreciate you coming on this podcast, spending some time with me, talking about tournaments, talking about fishing. We gotta do it again sometime.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm glad you had me. I really enjoyed this.
You just listened to the Fishing Fanatics podcast with your host, Eric Stewart. Feel free to check out our other podcasts and our other interviews on our channel on Spotify, YouTube, and much more. Check out our Instagram page, TikTok, and Facebook as well.